So today, trying to wade through what's happened last night took a bizarrely long amount of time, just trying to figure out where everything was. I think I have it now. Here we go. 1,160 Russians off the battlefield, 10 tanks, 22 armored combat vehicles, 35 artillery pieces, 53 vehicles and fuel tanks. So it looks a lot lighter when it's at 1,100 and change as opposed to 13 or 1,400. But then I looked at Andrew Perpetua's list and I was stunned. I don't think I've ever seen this disproportionate amount of destruction before. It's about 8 to 1, 8 Russian to 1 Ukrainian for every 1 Ukrainian loss. And most of it was by FPV drones. If you look over here and try to understand, by the way, if you want to know a really good source for unpacking all of this, ATP Geopolitics does a great job with this, and I highly recommend it. So, a little shout out to Johnny Pierce. Okay, because I just briefly breeze over just to get a sense of what's going on, and then I move on. Okay, Andrew Perpetua also said this: none of the long-term optimism for Ukraine's position in the war should overshadow the short-term problems Ukraine faces. This is very true. I said this when I was on with Greg Terry the other day. They have to get over this bridge in order to get to that place, and like it's pretty critical right now, because they have a lot of problems that need to be addressed. And many of those problems are, in fact, very serious problems. I've talked about this before. The more you zoom in on the war, the more it looks like it favors Russia. And the more you zoom out, the more it looks like it favors Ukraine. Both are true, and every action in Ukraine should keep both of these issues into account. You cannot ignore the short-term problems. All available resources need to be spent on addressing them, but those problems should not create a doomer cycle that blinds you from the bigger picture. You have to balance both views, and the long-term optimism is based on everyone constantly working to make things better. Okay, I think that's a very fair thing. That means government actions, aid, fundraisers, fighting attrition, etc. Everything has to continue, if not increase. So that's a pretty fair way of looking at it. Okay, let's look at what happened, the big things that happened last night. 2 Russian military boats destroyed in Crimea, Uzkaya Bay, sorry about that. Ukrainian attack maritime drones Magra V5 successfully attacked the ship-boat composition of the aggressor state of the Russian Federation. In order to neutralize attack sea drones on the approach to Uzkaya Bay, the Russian occupiers in Crimea took military aircraft into the sky 32 times. I've looked at the video too, and I'll show you where to find it. In particular, the S-27, 30, 35, MiG-29, BE-12, and AN-26 aircraft, KA helicopters 27 and 29, and Mi-8. The invaders also chaotically used small arms and 30 millimeter cannons. As a result of the attack, 2 Russian boats were destroyed, high-speed transport ones, airborne KS-701 Tunets, or sometimes called Tuna. Okay, you see this here, Ukraine's HUR strikes 2 Putin boats in Crimea. And if we go down a little bit, like this is like some of the footage, like they're shooting at this here. Telegram channels indicated around 2:30, traffic across Kerch Bridge was halted by the Russian Special Services. Residents in Kerch reported hearing about 10 explosions over the city. The Russian Ministry of Defense said that regular air defense systems destroyed 8 tactical missiles over the Azov Sea, intercepted 8 UAVs over the Black Sea or the Crimean Peninsula. In addition, 2 unmanned boats heading in the direction of the Crimean Peninsula were destroyed by regular firepower in the Black Sea, the ministry added. So that's how they frame this. Like, we destroyed those boats. Well, when those boats hit something else, they blow up and it's destroyed. So, okay, these boats are mostly owned by Russian border guards and the Ministry of Emergency Situations. So it wasn't big things or big boats, but yeah, this is where the first things were hit. And then we got to keep looking. And like, oh, by the way, Suchomimus did a really excellent job in explaining what was going on here. And I'm not going to show the video, but just go to his last video on 2 Russian boats, KS-701, and you can see like all the like the helicopters in the sky around it trying to shoot at it, and it's pretty amazing. So I don't post this here for YouTube's purposes. Okay, the Crimean Bridge. Now that was over on the left side of Crimea, on the western side. Now there was stuff around the Crimean Bridge as well. So what was going on there? I posted this about 15 hours ago. Is something happening here? What it is not entirely clear. And people were asking me, is this really happening? Is the Kerch Bridge really? Okay, but the proper answer would have been, there's a man with a gun over there telling me I've got to beware. So if somebody had answered that, they would have gotten an A+, because, well, at any rate, here's what happened. Crimea is rocked by explosions after reported ATACMS strikes. So several explosions were heard in eastern Crimea overnight, according to local reports, as Russia says it shot down several Western-provided long-range ATACMS missiles. Crimean city of Kerch between Wednesday and Thursday. Russian independent media outlet Astra reported that there were around 20 explosions. So it was something. Russia's defense ministry said on Thursday that its air defenses had shot down 8 ATACMS missiles over the Sea of Azov overnight, as well as 8 airborne drones over the Black Sea close to Crimea. So they're saying, like, nothing to see here, right? During the night, the missile attack on the Kerch area in Crimea was reported approximately 240 kilometers from the front line. As claimed by some Ukrainian sources, the target was near the bridge, but not the bridge itself. At the same time, Russian appointed advisor to the head of Crimea writes the following about the night attack. While repelling the enemy attack on the transport infrastructure of the city of Kerch, 2 ferries, a car ferry, a rail ferry, were damaged from the debris of downed missiles. Well, okay. Was it debris of downed missiles, or did they hit and then create debris? But the glazing of superstructures was damaged. There were no casualties among sailors or civilians. Once the damage is assessed, ferry service will resume. It reminds me of Baghdad Bob. Do you remember Baghdad Bob in the Iraq War? He was always saying, there's no problems, everything's okay. Okay. Russian media reported last night attack on occupied Crimea destroyed 4 boats, 2 ferries, and a pilot boat. So that's what was happening. Now, this is different, separate, independent. So we went from western Crimea to eastern Crimea near the Kerch, and now we're looking at actually inland into Russia. Russian Telegram channels report a drone attack on Taman Oil Refinery in Krasnodar region of Russia this morning, and that's here. So we went from here to now here to here. Okay. Early morning, there was this drone attack on the oil depot's port city in Taman near the Kerch, and you can see something smoking in the background. Okay, let's switch gears and talk about some political kinds of things here very briefly. Moscow minister implies peace is possible only if the Kremlin keeps its invaded territories. And so Lavrov is saying, like, okay, we can have a peace talks, but we're keeping what we've grabbed. But the Ukrainians simultaneously are not willing to talk to us. Well, there's a reason that they're not willing to talk to you. In the same way that you're actually not willing to talk to them, you're just saying that you are willing, but only under these conditions, so you're not actually willing to talk to them. So let's call a spade a spade. Next, I just thought that this was interesting to see a tank rolling through town. Like, that's, wow. Like, you don't see that every day. Well, I guess they see that every day in Ukraine, but it's just something to watch. Wow. Okay, last little bit I want to show you. The UK Parliament, I thought this was kind of interesting, just ironic. UK Parliament has been officially dissolved ahead of early elections. It's to be held on July 4th. Just thought that was a fascinating time to hold their elections. I mean, that's all we wanted, actually. I mean, was to have that representation, but okay. All that to say, my friends, thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.